Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at SpunkyOldBroad.com. And now, back to the show.
My guest today is Annette Fazio. And she is really a very interesting person because she's got an amazing background. With 25 years of business ownership and leadership experience in the food service industry, she's now learned how to develop practical, relatable plans to thrive in a competitive business environment while maintaining low employee turnover and exceptional customer loyalty, which of course is the key. In fact, after starting with nothing, she's one of only a handful of women business owners who took her business over the $1 million mark, making her uniquely qualified to teach, train, and motivate people at every level. She uses her infectious, quick-witted humor to deliver educational and entertaining keynotes and seminars that not only remind people that getting into business is not the same as staying in business, but also gives them a practical solution to create a spark in their workplace without burning it down. So welcome, Annette Fazio. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. Thank you, Dr. Carson.
Well, I don't know if that's your cell phone or not, Annette, but we're going to ask you to turn it off if it is.
Well, I put it on airplane mode, so so much for that.
Yeah. Well, I would say, and as you know, this is a show for women 50 plus. So there's so many women who are always saying, oh boy, I hit 50. What's going to happen to me now? My life is half over, and all of these things that we hear. And you and I both know that's not the case at all. Oh. So but it is a time to look back. And I don't know if you can answer this because there's to pick out one single thing. What would you say was your greatest life or professional accomplishment? Because that's hard to do. When you've lived as long as we have, it's hard to say, well, it's just this one thing. So what would you say?
Well, I'm very proud of the restaurant that I started. Considering the background, I never worked in a restaurant before I opened it, which, by the way, I do not recommend.
No, I want to tell you, that's probably one of the hardest businesses to be in, is the restaurant business. I mean, they come and go like crazy. I'll go someplace and I'll say, well, where is it? And it's already stopped. But I will tell you that some of the oldie goldies are the ones that seem to hang around. I don't know why. It's the real nouveau kinds of places that kind of come in and go out. But anyway, I'm sorry. You were saying that you had no experience.
No, I had no experience, and it was a fabulous accomplishment, especially to be in business for 20 years and to take that over the $1 million mark. But I got to tell you that my book that I started writing after I was 60, I think I was 65 when I started writing it, and it got published. I mean, and I love the book. It's dedicated to the New York City firefighters. And so that to me is my personal accomplishment that I'm most proud of.
So your personal accomplishment is the book and your professional accomplishment is the restaurant. So what you said is dedicated to the firefighters. So what was the purpose of it and who benefits from it?
Well, the purpose of the book, it started out, was to just honor the firefighters because I had the honor and the privilege to feed them dinner after 9/11. So I went to the firehouse and gave them dinner a few times. And they really are a league in their own. But in the process, I realized that people do not give themselves the credit for accomplishing great feats. I mean, firemen run into a firehouse. They run into a building that's on fire. There's no question about bravery there. But there's so many people who have to go through I call them their own personal burning buildings.
And that's true. And some of them they create for themselves.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's still burning.
Right.
Right, whether they did it themselves or whether it was handed to them. You know, like a illness, a diagnosis, a sick child, a husband, you know, leaving, disappearing. I mean, all of those things we have to go through. We not only have to, you not only have to go through it, then you have to figure out how to get to the other side and rebuild. And those are amazing accomplishments. And people really don't give themselves credit. You know, they go, well, you know, I had to do it. But you know what? Not everybody does what they have to do.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they benefiting from the book, though? Who will benefit most?
At the, I mean, some people just enjoy reading it because every chapter starts with a firefighter story. And they're not all sad. Some of them are funny. But at the end of each chapter, I call them thoughtful discernments. And it asks questions that tie into, because I use the firefighter stories as a metaphor. And then there's some personal stories. And then at the end of the chapter, I ask the reader some questions that actually go back into the story. In other words, what we use the story for. And what I've gotten is, oh, wow, you know, I did that. Oh, I did that. So it's to give people recognition of their own competence and self-achievements and self-confidence because they're looking at what they did. And
so instead it reaffirms people who say, oh, it wasn't anything. Oh, you know, it wasn't that much. And you're saying, yeah, it is. And that's great. So that, well, I love the idea that you told different people's stories because you know yourself that stories are the crux of everything. And people reading the stories, especially the true stories of firefighters and what they've gone through, whether it's 9/11 or whether it's family issues or whether it's just anything, you know, rescuing anybody from anywhere. I mean, they do amazing things. It's just incredible. But you also now are in a different situation. You're relaunching your professional speaking career. And why are you saying, number one, why are you saying it's a relaunch? Number two, what is the new focus? And three, why now?
Well, I'm going to say this right up front. Retirement's not all it's cracked up to be.
Well, of course, you know me, Annette, and I'm not going to retire at all. And somebody said to me the other day, don't retire because everybody I know that retire is dead 3 months later. And I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I do know that, you know, I think I was thinking about this today, as a matter of fact, strangely. And I was thinking, okay, because, you know, I'm not a spring chicken. And so I said, well, you know, my son is saying, Mom, why do you keep doing what you're doing? And I keep saying, because I love it. And, you know, so I was thinking, okay, so what if I wasn't doing this? I know I would volunteer in a lot of different situations, not hospitals and things like this, but I'd get active. If I move, you know, I'll get active in the chamber there and I'll get to know people and I'll be active in the community. But at the end of the day, I thought, you know, 90 days is probably as long as I could take it. And that's even pushing it. So, yeah, go ahead. And of course, retirement is not what, but you didn't really retire, Annette, did you?
Well, a few years back I did. I actually married, I got married to the man that when I was 19, I got engaged to. He came home from Vietnam and we got engaged, but we knew how to fight better than anybody I knew. And so it was a tough time for me. My mother, I was 19 and my mother was literally dying and he came home from the war. So I don't think that relationship had a chance. And we kept the same friends over the years. So now we're back together. His wife passed away. My husband passed away. And we just clicked again. We still know how to fight, but it's different. We still revert back to 15 and 17 when we met. So I did retire for a very short period of time, and then I started writing the book. And it consumed a lot of my time. And then I decided recently that I want to be a motivational keynote speaker. And for women entrepreneurs and small business owners, because I do think they need all the backup hope and possibilities that you can get. It's a tough period of time. I mean, I know when I was owning my business, there were days that I thought, oh, we're going under, but we weren't. And we just had to hang in there, and it was a success. And I say relaunching because maybe 10, 12 years ago, I did start speaking, and I was out there professionally speaking. And I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Because back then it was more about the how to. And now it's more about the why. Why go out there? Why start a business? Why create a new life? And then I still have my seminars on the how to make it work once you've decided to do that.
So you, about 12 years ago, you started speaking. And then when did you stop speaking?
Yeah, pretty much when I got married.
Which was how long ago?
That was 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So you spoke for about 5 or 6 years, and then you decided not to do it any longer. But I did see you at meetings, speaker meetings, and you were not speaking at that time when you would be coming to the meetings?
I never stopped coming to national speakers meetings, never. There was something about being with those people, with that group, people like you, that kept me young and interested in life. So I always stayed, but I was also writing during that period of time. So I wasn't speaking, but I was writing.
So how long did it take you to write your book?
Well, it was probably a total of 5 years, because all I wanted to do was write this small book that honored the firefighters. It was only 10,000 words. And then a professional editor got a hold of it, and he offered to help me expand it pro bono. He liked it that much. So I did that, but it didn't have quite the focus that I could love and tell you what it was about. And then I met another gal who was a publisher who also edited it, and she helped me change the landscape of it. So now that book is what it is now. Before it was kind of all over the place, but now it's 65,000 words.
What's interesting about that is you and I both know people from the National Speakers Association who write books in a weekend. Yeah. And there's one particular woman, and I'm sure you know who she is. And I don't know, I think she's written something like 58 or 78 books, all of which are very successful. And that's what she does. She writes books. I mean, she's not one of these people who is a ghostwriter, and she's not a person who uses another person to help her write. She goes in, she gets a hotel room, she has done her research, and she writes this book in a weekend. And I think it's amazing. And it's not a hack. She's not a hack. She's very good. So why do you think it took, and I think this is important for our listening audience to know, because everybody out there has a book in them. Why do you think it took you 5 years, and it takes, I mean, I know somebody else, as a matter of fact, he's going to be speaking next at the next Florida speakers meeting. Unfortunately, I won't be there because I'll be in Vancouver, but, and he does the same thing. He goes to a cabin and writes, in a weekend. So why do you think some people can do that and it took you 5 years? Because I think it's important for our listening audience to know it doesn't matter. It depends on your style and what you want to do. But I want to get your opinion on this. Well,
the first book took me a very short period of time. But like I said, it wasn't a big book. It was the expanding of the book, and it was a labor of love. I mean, had to stop and interview other firefighters, and pull the stories in. And then when the second editor took over, let's put it this way, I thought I was done 3 times. But
okay. which is an important lesson in itself, because editors can really rip your book apart, and you think it's this golden egg, and they say it's not even hatched yet. And
right.
You get a publisher who says, no, this is not our genre, we don't want to do it, you need to put this in or take that out. So understand that when you write your passion, it doesn't mean it's anybody else's passion. And so you go through a lot of things, and you did. You were done 3 times, but you weren't.
Right. I was done 3 times. Now, one of the things the last editor did was she would constantly come back and say to me, where are you going with this? It has to go somewhere. And I went, oh, well, I thought I did go there. But
I get that because, you're seeing what the result is, but no one else does. It's kind of, right. That. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She'd hold my feet to the fire or she would say, why do you have this in there? And I went, because I thought it was a nice story. She says, but it's not giving the book more credibility. So there's a lot, and this was a different kind of book. When I write about business, and I was a newspaper article, I wrote newspaper articles for business for a few years, sat down, bumped it out. I can probably, do the same when it comes to business, but this was emotions and feeling and like I said, a labor of love. So I wanted it to be perfect. When somebody reads this book, and I've had this a lot, wow, that's what I wanted. I wanted the wow. And not for ego, but for the people that I honor in the book. So, yeah. I think that's the important lesson. If you're in a hurry, maybe don't write a book.
Well, it's really interesting how different people approach different things that they do. And of course, that's what makes life go round. But is that the one particular event that changed your life, this book, or was it your marriage, or what was it that you think changed your life?
Oh, I was a single parent, and I struggled working for jobs that weren't paying very much. And I was a receptionist at an advertising agency, which was kind of exciting, to hear them create the commercials. And I was great with the people, but he called me in one day and I truly thought I was getting a raise, and he fired me.
That shows you various forms of perception.
Oh, yeah. Well, he said to me, the clients absolutely love you. He says, but the workers say you talk too much. Because I couldn't just type the commercial. I'd have to go talk to them about it because it was interesting and how they get that information. So they said I was disruptive. But he felt very guilty about firing me because he liked me. We were friends. And he set up a sales job working for a local radio station. And I looked at him and I said, I can't sell anything. And he said, trust me. Just go on the appointment. I did it because I believe that if somebody does something for you, you should at least honor what they have done. So I went on the appointment figuring, okay, this might be a waste of my afternoon. And he hired me before I walked out the door. I'm like, what am I going to do now? Oh my God. But that literally changed my life. I discovered a whole side of me that I did not think was possible.
Well, see, you like to meet people. You like to talk.
Yeah.
You were energetic about what you did. And that's what a salesperson is. I mean, it's getting people to trust you, to like you, to want to do business with you. And that was what you excelled at. So that suited you totally.
Oh, so, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So how did that change your life, though?
Well, Well, first of all, it put me in a different direction. I didn't feel like I was just a cog in a wheel. I discovered that there was a part of me that enjoyed people. I also got to walk in and out of restaurants because I would work with the restaurant owners for the radio sales. And, looking back, I'd walk in and I go, I could do this. I never really planned on it, but, I'd see it. I'd see the operation. I'd see the kitchen and go, I could do this. And eventually, because in the beginning, I thought, wow, you don't have to be that bright to be in business. Then I'd go back like 3 weeks later and they were out of business. And I'd go, well, you have to be brighter than that. So it gave me a whole new perspective of what was out there that I didn't really utilize until I moved out of that state and into Maine. But it was still all there. And so when I needed to, I tapped into it. And that's why it changed my life.
It's interesting. I go into a restaurant and I have opinions. I have an opinion about the wait staff. I have an opinion about how the restaurant is run. I have an opinion about how it looks. I have an opinion about the food. I never have an opinion saying I could do this because I know I couldn't. I would never know how to run a kitchen. I wouldn't know what needs to be in the kitchen, and I just wouldn't know any of those things. So isn't it interesting how we can go in and say, oh yeah, I could do the customer service. I certainly could do, the greeting, and I could handle the cash register and so forth. But no, I would never say I could do this. That's really interesting. So what would you say is something that people wouldn't know about you that would be interesting to them?
I'm not sure. Well, interesting maybe, but surprising. I mean, okay. I am a pretty happy person now. I mean, I have been for a very long time. But there, way back then, probably during the time that even when I was working as a sales rep, there was a lot of major things that happened in my life, a lot of traumatic things. And I truly felt I was a victim of life, not necessarily of somebody else, but of life. And on my own, barely making any. I mean, this is a number. I made $5,700 the whole year and had a receipt for $3,000 for childcare. And yeah, do the math. I have no idea how I pulled that off. However, I was so unhappy that I would I would call a suicide hotline. I just was so miserable. I just didn't think I could survive another day. And I had 2 children, and my parents died when I was young, and I was so tortured by, I don't think I can do this, but I can't leave them alone. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I always had a sense of humor. I mean, I would say things and people would laugh, but most of the time I wasn't kidding, but they listened because I was funny. But that was, and people look at me now and they go, no. I go, yeah, I was unhappy. I was miserable. I was almost suicidal. And when I was in the restaurant, because even when my husband was dying, I still always had a smile on my face. And I'd have customers say, you always have a smile on your face. Now, what do you say? They know your husband is critically ill. And I'd look at him and go, well, I bought it back in 1968 and I haven't gotten my money's worth yet. So.
Well, you want to hear something interesting, Annette, is that yes. They have found that most, not all, but most comedians have this suicidal tendency. They're very unhappy people and really have a pretty miserable personal life. And maybe that's why they invent humor. Maybe that's why they do their jokes. Maybe that's why they put on this front. But in reality, they're not they're not happy people. So the fact that you were funny, the fact that you did smile, the fact that people got this impression of you is not that far-fetched.
No.
And it's something that's very interesting, and that, people will think about. Well, we're coming to the end of part one. I mean, we're going to continue the conversation here. But folks, hang on. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with Annette and finish up with where she's going and what she's doing now. So hold on.